Two music legends, but one shocking feud. While fans may think of Phil Collins and Paul McCartney as icons cut from the same cloth, the truth is far darker. Collins has openly admitted that he utterly hated McCartney, and the reasons behind his bitterness are finally coming to light. From bruised egos to unforgettable slights, this feud shows that even legends can clash in the most surprising ways. Phil Collins. It takes a lot of nerve to approach a celebrity and ask for their autograph, especially when that celebrity is one of your heroes. For fans, the moment can feel like a once-in-a-lifetime chance to connect with someone whose music, films, or artistry has shaped their lives. But when the tables are turned, when a superstar asks another superstar for a signature, you might imagine the exchange to be marked with respect, warmth, and mutual admiration. After all, these are peers at the very top of their fields, men and women who know what it's like to stand under the blinding spotlight of fame. Surely, if Phil Collins, one of the most recognizable voices and drummers in rock history, were to ask for an autograph, the recipient would be honored. By any measure, Collins is a giant. As the drummer and later frontman of Genesis, he helped guide the band through its evolution from a progressive rock outfit to one of the most successful mainstream acts of the late 20th century. Genesis alone has sold nearly 80 million records worldwide, according to Chartmasters. And when you factor in Collins's massively successful solo career, featuring hits like In the Air Tonight, Against All Odds, and Another Day in Paradise, his reach and influence extend even further. For decades, his voice and drum fills have been etched into the collective memory of music fans across the globe. It would be difficult, if not impossible, to view him as anything less than a bona fide rock legend. And yet, even legends have their idols. For Collins, few names tower higher than the Beatles. Like countless musicians of his generation, he grew up in awe of their revolutionary sound and transformative impact on popular music. So when the opportunity arose for Collins to meet Paul McCartney, the legendary bassist, songwriter, and co-frontman of the Beatles, it must have felt like the perfect moment to bridge the gap between fan and peer. Collins wasn't some anonymous admirer off the street. He was an accomplished artist in his own right, someone whose career trajectory had arguably mirrored the Beatles' path from experimental rock to stadium-filling dominance. And yet, Collins still carried the reverence of a fan. That reverence took the form of a request. Collins owned a first-edition copy of The Beatles, the band's iconic, self-titled 1968 double album, better known as the White Album. For Beatles devotees, such an item is already a collector's treasure. But Collins, who had played at McCartney's 1997 Music for Montserrat benefit concert, hoped to elevate its significance even further by securing an autograph from the man who helped create it. Surely, it seemed, McCartney would understand the sentiment behind the request. What followed, however, was not the warm exchange Collins had perhaps imagined. According to accounts relayed in Ultimate Classic Rock, McCartney responded in a way that could easily be read as dismissive, even condescending. Rather than treating Collins's request as a gesture of admiration between two accomplished musicians, McCartney reportedly offered a reply that seemed to brush off the moment, one that would have stung anyone in Collins's position. Whether it was meant as a lighthearted joke or as an expression of superiority, the effect was the same. It left Collins feeling slighted. Even the most legendary musicians have heroes of their own, moments when admiration outweighs ego, and the prospect of meeting someone who shaped your musical world can be both thrilling and nerve-wracking. For Phil Collins, that moment came when he crossed paths with Paul McCartney, the iconic Beatle whose work had inspired countless musicians, including Collins himself. Despite his own monumental career, Collins approached the encounter with the humility of a fan, armed with a treasured possession, a first edition of The Beatles by Hunter Davies, a book that chronicled the lives and rise of McCartney and his bandmates. For any serious Beatles enthusiast, such a volume is a prized artifact, and Collins clearly wanted to mark the occasion by having McCartney sign it. Recalling the moment in a 2016 interview with the Sunday Times, Collins painted a vivid picture of what should have been a celebratory exchange. McCartney came up with Heather Mills, and I had a first edition of The Beatles by Hunter Davies, and I said, "Hey, Paul, do you mind signing this for me?" Collins began. To him, the request was straightforward. A fan asking for an autograph from one of the most influential figures in modern music. What he didn't anticipate was McCartney's response, a reply that would leave Collins both irked and amused in equal measure. According to Collins, McCartney's reaction was playful yet patronizing, tinged with a kind of condescension that immediately registered. And he said, "Oh, Heather, our little Phil's a bit of a Beatles fan." And I thought, "You fuck. You fuck," Collins recounted, the frustration evident even decades later. The remark implied that Collins, despite his decades of achievements and international stardom, was being treated like a child, or worse, a cute, well-meaning fan who had no right to step into McCartney's world. The diminutive phrasing, "our little Phil," reduced a towering figure in his own right to a mere admirer. For someone like Collins, who had not only played with Genesis and achieved solo superstardom, but also helped define the sound of a generation, the comment stung sharply. What makes the story particularly compelling is that Collins is not the type to quietly absorb condescension. Over the years, he has demonstrated a keen awareness of his own worth and a willingness to stand up for himself when crossed. In this instance, the memory of McCartney's remark stayed with him, a testament to how deeply it registered. Collins's reaction, though delivered privately and perhaps with a hint of restrained humor, conveyed unmistakably that he would not tolerate being patronized, even by a Beatle. It was a rare glimpse into the personal pride and fiery dignity of a man often remembered for his calm, genial public persona. Non-stopping there, according to reports from Billboard, McCartney reached out to Collins via email in an attempt to address the situation, seeking some semblance of reconciliation after the fact. The effort was subtle, almost understated, reflecting McCartney's characteristic pragmatism rather than a dramatic public apology. There were no grand gestures, no bouquets of flowers, no public fanfare. It was, in essence, a quiet attempt to acknowledge Collins's feelings while moving past the awkwardness of the original exchange. Collins himself has described the email with a wry combination of acceptance and lingering amusement. "I certainly didn't get any flowers from him. I got more of a, 'let's just get on with our lives,'" he explained. The phrasing captures both the simplicity and the peculiarity of McCartney's approach. It was not an elaborate act of contrition, but a gesture intended to diffuse tension and restore normalcy. Collins continued, reflecting on the nature of the communication. "And I'm sorry he's upset that I kinda said something nasty about him." In other words, McCartney acknowledged the friction, recognized Collins's feelings, and left the door open for the two to continue their professional and personal interactions without the weight of the slight hanging over them. The result, by all accounts, was a silently established ceasefire. While neither party issued a formal statement announcing reconciliation, the email functioned as a tacit understanding. The awkward moment was behind them, and there was no need for it to define their relationship going forward. Beyond his emailed attempt to smooth things over, McCartney never elaborated on the exchange he had with his fellow musician back in 2002. According to all available reports, the former Beatle elected to keep the matter private, perhaps preferring that it quietly fade into history rather than become fodder for gossip or tabloid speculation. Whether he felt the comment about Collins being a Beatles fan was harmless, humorous, or misinterpreted, McCartney seems to have made a conscious decision not to dwell on it publicly. He didn't issue a formal apology, nor did he comment extensively in interviews, suggesting that he considered the matter closed, or at least not worth reopening. This approach, in typical McCartney fashion, reflects a pragmatism that has long characterized his personal and professional dealings. Sometimes it's easier to move on than to dissect every awkward moment. For Collins, however, the incident has not entirely vanished from memory. In interviews, he has recounted the exchange with a mix of amusement and lingering irritation, emphasizing how McCartney's remark, "Our little Phil," struck him as patronizing, despite their shared history and mutual accomplishments. Collins, ever forthright, has conveyed that he never forgot it, and that the memory of being talked down to by one of his idols remained with him long after the encounter. While McCartney may have hoped an email would quietly smooth over the tension, Collins's recounting demonstrates that certain moments leave a permanent imprint, particularly when pride and ego intersect with admiration. Interestingly, the email itself appears to have been the extent of any formal outreach from McCartney. The two have not publicly re-engaged about the incident, nor is there evidence that they maintain an ongoing conversation about it. As far as anyone knows, the matter remains a quiet, unresolved footnote in the history of two British music icons. The absence of continued dialogue leaves a certain mystique around the encounter. What exactly passed through McCartney's mind when he delivered the offhand remark? Did he intend genuine teasing, or was it simply an unconsidered flippancy that collided with Collins's sensitivity to condescension? We may never know, and perhaps that ambiguity is part of what makes the story so compelling. This silence also raises a tantalizing, if somewhat humorous, question. Did Phil Collins ever receive the autograph he originally asked for? The initial request was sincere, heartfelt, and emblematic of a musician paying homage to one of the greatest artists of his generation. But if McCartney never signed the book, then the exchange becomes not just a story about an awkward moment between two stars, but also a slightly bitter anecdote about missed closure. Fans are left imagining Collins standing with his first edition in hand, perhaps a little disappointed, but ultimately amused by the peculiarities of human interaction, even at the highest levels of fame. In 1981, Phil Collins stepped out from behind the drum kit of Genesis and into the spotlight as a solo artist with the release of his debut album, Face Value. The record marked a pivotal moment in Collins's career, showcasing not only his musicianship, but also his songwriting, emotional depth, and ability to convey raw human vulnerability through sound. Unlike his work with Genesis, which often leaned toward elaborate progressive rock arrangements, Face Value was a deeply personal record, infused with introspection, emotional candor, and, above all, rhythmically compelling hooks that would come to define Collins's signature style. The album opens the door to some of Collins's most iconic tracks, starting with the unforgettable "In the Air Tonight." This song, with its slow-building tension, haunting vocals, and the now legendary drum break, quickly became emblematic of Collins's solo career. Its atmospheric production, paired with lyrics full of enigmatic emotion, captured the imagination of fans and critics alike, cementing Collins as a force to be reckoned with outside the context of Genesis. Alongside this brooding classic, tracks like Hand in Hand and You Know What I Mean further demonstrated Collins's capacity to blend heartfelt lyrical content with accessible melodies and inventive percussion. These songs allowed listeners to witness a more intimate, vulnerable side of Collins, one that could simultaneously rock arenas and speak directly to the listener's own emotional landscape. Yet, beyond his original compositions, Collins also included a particularly striking cover that revealed the depth of his musical influences, a rendition of the Beatles' Tomorrow Never Knows. By selecting this song, Collins paid homage to the band that had shaped his musical imagination from a young age. The Beatles' experimental psychedelic sound had left an indelible mark on him, and his reinterpretation of the track was both a loving tribute and a bold personal statement. On face value, Collins transformed the original's hallucinatory textures into a soundscape infused with his own rhythmic sensibilities and vocal timbre, demonstrating his ability to honor the past while simultaneously making it his own. The choice also underscored Collins's enduring admiration for Liverpool's finest, a theme that would recur throughout his career, including in interviews, collaborations, and later musical projects. For fans of Collins and the Beatles alike, the cover is a reminder of how influential the Fab Four remained in the lives of musicians who followed in their footsteps. It's a nod to legacy, reverence, and the cyclical nature of musical inspiration. Face Value was more than just a collection of songs. It was a statement of intent. It showcased Collins's versatility as a songwriter, singer, and multi-instrumentalist, proving that he could stand on his own outside the framework of Genesis. The album also reflected the emotional turbulence in his personal life, particularly his divorce from his first wife, Andrea Bertarelli, a theme that runs quietly beneath the surface of tracks like I Missed Again. Through the music, listeners could feel Collins's introspection, heartbreak, and the resilience that would define much of his later work. In blending heartfelt confessional songwriting with rhythmic innovation, Collins created a blueprint for the solo pop-rock artist navigating personal expression in the public eye. Beyond its critical and commercial success, Face Value endures because of its combination of timeless melodies, compelling percussion, and emotive depth. Tracks like In the Air Tonight and Hand in Hand continue to resonate with audiences decades later, while the cover of Tomorrow Never Knows offers a glimpse into Collins's musical soul, a musician deeply aware of the giants who came before him and eager to honor them through his own creative voice. Listening to the album today, one can trace the DNA of modern pop-rock percussion, atmospheric production, and emotionally nuanced songwriting back to this very debut, which firmly established Phil Collins as not only a rock legend in his own right, but also a devoted student of music history. For anyone interested in experiencing this milestone in Collins's career, Face Value is readily available for listening, including his Beatles cover, via platforms like Discogs, streaming services, and vinyl reissues. The album remains a testament to Collins's ability to blend personal storytelling, technical skill, and homage to musical influences in a way that few artists can. It's a debut that doesn't just announce a solo career, it cements a legacy. In practice, however, the result proved polarizing. While the rest of Face Value earned acclaim for its mix of raw emotional honesty, rhythmic inventiveness, and polished production, Collins's rendition of Tomorrow Never Knows drew sharp criticism from fans and critics alike. As ultimate classic rock bluntly observed in a 2013 retrospective, why Collins thought it was necessary to lay such a giant turd on an otherwise awesome album is beyond us. The colorful phrasing captures the sense of disappointment shared by many listeners. Here was a landmark album with moments of genius, punctuated by a cover that, for some, felt discordant, unnecessary, and even disrespectful to the source material. Several factors contributed to the mixed reception. Collins's version diverged significantly from the original's hallucinatory production and otherworldly atmosphere, favoring a more polished, percussive, and pop-oriented arrangement. While his approach reflected his own musical identity, drum-heavy, rhythmically intricate, and melodically accessible, it arguably stripped the song of the psychedelic mystique that made it a revolutionary piece in the first place. For purists and Beatles aficionados, this departure was jarring. They had come to expect the ethereal, tape-looped textures, backward guitars, and Lennon-esque vocal delivery of the original, and Collins's smoother, solo artist approach simply didn't capture the same magic. Adding another layer to the intrigue is the question of whether Paul McCartney himself ever heard Collins's version. McCartney, a musician who is no stranger to reinterpretations of his work, has generally been gracious about others covering Beatles songs, provided the spirit of the piece is respected. But in this case, the reception, at least from fans, suggests that Collins may have overstepped, and whether McCartney has weighed in publicly remains unknown. It's plausible, and perhaps wise, that the two have chosen to maintain distance on this particular matter. After all, the history between Collins and McCartney is already colored by moments of tension, including the infamous autograph incident, and revisiting a cover that some consider a misfire might only reopen old wounds. The episode underscores a fascinating tension inherent in music and fandom. Admiration does not guarantee consensus. Even the most skilled and accomplished musicians can misjudge how their interpretations will resonate with audiences, especially when reinterpreting beloved classics. Collins, celebrated for his emotive songwriting and innovative drumming, demonstrated through face value that he had a remarkable ability to translate personal pain into universally relatable music. Yet, the Tomorrow Never Knows cover serves as a reminder that even legends can falter when stepping into the shadow of giants like the Beatles. What do you think about the conflict between Phil Collins and Paul McCartney? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.